everybody today. So, thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here with you. I just sang Caro Nome, which is from one of my all-time favorite grand operas, Rigoletto, by Giuseppe Verdi. And the character who sings it, she is 16 years old. Her name's Gilda. She's just fallen in love for the first time. And this song is all about heart and breath and what makes us breathless. It's kind of like opera. Most people think that singers sing in their throats and in their vocal cords, when in truth, what most of good singing relies on, breathing properly. And shortly after I started studying Gilda's role, and I was just a little bit older than she was, I was diagnosed with a condition called idiopathic pulmonary arterial hypertension. It's a condition of the lungs, which typically within 2 to 5 years, at least when I was diagnosed, leads to heart failure. The only cure is a lung transplant or a heart and lung transplant. So I spent 5 years traveling around the world and singing, but at the end of that 5 years, I was at the end of my rope. My heart was failing, and I needed a new pair of lungs fast. Otherwise, I wouldn't sing and I wouldn't breathe again. Thankfully, a match was found, and I received a transplant, but the surgery was incredibly complicated. My chest was left open for 2 weeks. I was in a coma for 34 days. All of my muscles atrophied because I was on a respirator. And while I thought I knew an awful lot about breathing, I realized pretty quickly that I didn't. I spent the next 2 months working with David Wheeler and his team of respiratory therapists at the Cleveland Clinic, who were retraining me to learn the most basic muscle memory that each of us have. After I finally got out of the hospital and relearned how to breathe and started retraining my voice, I was introduced to a wonderful breathing coach named Deborah Birnbaum, who helped me reintegrate breath into my singing voice. Their help paid off in more than arias, because when I needed another double lung transplant, instead of it taking me months to relearn how to breathe, it was less than 2 weeks. While we all come into this world breathing right, somewhere along the way, most of us, opera singers included, forget how to breathe. And since I feel uniquely qualified as the only person in the world who has trained 3 sets of lungs to sing Verdi arias, I hope that you will humor me as I offer TEDMED a breathing lesson. So if you guys can all stand up, I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath, okay? Breathe. Hold it. Okay, I see a lot of shoulders up, a lot of stomachs in, and a lot of people looking like they're going to burst. So you can exhale. Thank you so much, and please feel free to sit back down. When I was relearning how to breathe, I felt like that because I was trying to make these 2 spongy balloons that we have in our chest and that we call lungs move on their own. But since my muscles had atrophied, I learned something that you would all learn if you tried to breathe without any of your muscles. It doesn't work very well. It felt like I was drowning because while our lungs are fantastic receptacles for air and blood to do their magic dance, they're totally passive creatures. They don't move. So as I was trying to figure out how I was going to breathe, I zoomed out intellectually to my rib cage. It's kind of the protector of our thoracic cavity. It keeps everything in place, and it helps all of our positive and negative pressures move properly so we can breathe. But bones don't do anything without muscles. So that brought us to the intercostal muscles. I want you guys to take another breath, and while you're breathing, I want you to be aware of the muscles that connect your ribs together. These are our intercostal muscles. And just feel them as you breathe in and out. They're responsible for about 25% of the air that we breathe, but not on their own. They're only really effective at doing that with the help of some of the other muscles in our body, which brings us down to the big kahuna, the diaphragm, which is this crazy shark mouth-shaped muscle underneath our lungs, and it does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to breathing. It controls about 40% of the air that comes in and out of our lungs. When it contracts, it moves down, and hopefully it pushes our gut and everything else down there out in the process. When it relaxes, it lets all of that nasty carbon dioxide escape from our system. And it's a wonderful, effective muscle when used properly, but it's voluntary and involuntary. And while I was out, the respirator was doing all of the work of my diaphragm. So my diaphragm really wasn't working at all. And I would try, and I would try, and I would try to breathe, and it was entirely ineffective until I remembered something that an old director had told me. She said, when you breathe, your diaphragm shouldn't be doing any of the work. All of the work should be done by your abs, by your lower back, and by your glutes. So for a moment, I want you guys to take another breath, but this time, I want you to imagine that your lungs are in your belly, in your lower back, and in your butt cheeks. And I know it sounds a little graphic, but it works. If you feel like you are breathing in your butt cheeks, you are breathing right. So as you think about all of these places where we get our breath from, how we pull this beautiful air into our bodies, I'm going to ask you to take one last breath when I tell you to. What I want you to do is take the deepest breath that you can, let all of the air out. Plug your nose, hold your tummy with your other hand, and hold it out until I tell you to inhale again. Okay, can we do that? All right, ready? Take a deep breath in, exhale, hold it. Okay, so our breathing apparatus is like an entire opera company. We have our high maintenance diva principles, the lungs, which are supported by our crew, which are the ribs. Then we have our supporting roles, which are the intercostal muscles, and the conductor who holds everything together but is invisible and useless without the help of our director, who is our lower back, our orchestra, who's our abs, and the chorus, who is our glutes. Some might be more glamorous than others. They're all important. Breathe. Now that's grand opera.